Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to all of you to Friends of Europe's annual Balkans Summit. This year, for obvious reasons, we're online, but hopefully that shouldn't take away from the sort of conversation we have, the intensity and the engagement we need to talk about what's happening in the Balkans. This is an important week. We're on the eve of some very important decisions by the European Union, European Council, and this event is very specifically in advance of that, where we've brought together voices, politicians, civil society organisations, those from the private sector, all to engage in this conversation around regionalisation, greater regionalisation, and the aim for a more stable economy and democracy, and a debate that's been raging for some time in terms of how we ensure that the region is able to both access the benefits of entering the Union, but also, more importantly, to ensure that the region and the states are stable, resilient, and able to flourish economically, which is obviously some of the key issues that we want to discuss here today in this first day, which is about regionalisation and stability in terms of democracy. And we will have subsequent sessions in the next 2 days. My name is Dharmendra Kanani. I'm Director of Insights, and I'll be your moderator for this first session. Before I say any further about the session itself, I want to just discuss with you some rules of engagement. Those of you who are Zoom savvy should know that you should have your screen on, have your name on, and keep yourself muted. If you are wishing to raise a question, a query, or want to comment in general, use your virtual hand. You'll find that under the icon on participants. Press that and you'll find the virtual hand to use that. And so I'll be able to bring you in. I also know that you want to come in and have a conversation and make your voice heard. I also want to warmly welcome our live stream audience who are participating in a different way, obviously. But you are not disincluded. You are very much included to participate and raise your questions and queries. Use hashtag Balkans Summit to engage, and we will try and take as many of you as we can. We have just over an hour for this conversation, and we have a stellar cast of contributors. In this first one, as we are talking about regionalisation and stability around democracy and governance and wider matters about integration and extension, we have mostly politicians for obvious reasons, but our audience is rich, diverse, and across Europe and wider afield. I don't need to say, most of you know what the stakes are. You also know the history that we are engaged in, but this is a particularly historic moment, as many West Balkan states have been waiting for a signal, a sign that actually they're on the right path and have an ability to join in the near future. And is the pathway the right one? But also we know that we've had a significant summit in Sofia where there's a decision, an agreement to form a form of a regional market, economic market, and greater cooperation and integration of certain elements. What we do know is infrastructure and integration of infrastructure is key. Given the fragility of many infrastructure issues within the region, we know that issues around security, environment, green transition, economic stability, jobs, and the brain drain that exists from the Balkans into everywhere else in Europe, but elsewhere, are areas and issues that need addressing and tackling. I'm very pleased that our first speaker is the President of North Macedonia. Welcome, Stevo.
Hey, hi.
Hello, a very warm welcome to you.
Good afternoon to everybody.
Thank you for joining us. I know that for all of you, this time is a very busy time. It's a critical time. And what I'd like to hear from you is what kind of fundamental change do you think has taken place or needs to take place in the context we find ourselves in right now? But also, is there a time now for a different approach to the Balkans, especially on the eve of the decisions that will be taken this week? And I'm particularly interested in the signal you're looking for. So over to you, Stevo, for your opening remarks and for setting the framework for this conversation. Very pleased to have you.
Thank you. Then good afternoon to everybody once more. Then you have started with a very significant sentence we are accustomed to for a very long period of time throughout our history. that this is a critical time. And I think that it should be deemed as a critical time for the European Union as well.
Indeed, you're absolutely right. Indeed, absolutely.
As to take a bit of history from the Balkan region we are so accustomed to, and to transfer to Brussels is going to be less of a burden to us. Let's fill that critical time and critical tasks and challenges ahead of us, but together, not only to say that the Balkan regional countries are facing that amount of problems and challenges ahead of us. Shortly, just to answer your question at the very beginning, Western Balkan countries do not need a different approach, neither by Brussels, not by the regional political elites who has been declared many years ago as Europhiles, because we do have a clear roadmap in the integration process, which is incorporated fully, in my view, in the new methodology being proposed by the French side a year and a half ago and accepted by the European Union this year. The essential criteria there, then, in that methodology and in all of the European acquis, I would say, are the fundamentals. Everybody knows that. That's a mantra we are repeating endlessly throughout the years in Skopje, in Belgrade, in Pristina, in Tirana, throughout the region, in Brussels as well. Then rule of law, the fight against organized crime and high corruption. But as you know, and that I'm now going back to my first sentence, that is the critical time, not only this year, but we're living in a critical times for Europe as well, as a whole. Then democratic development, as in many places in Europe, is under attack by populist politicians and movements in the Western Balkans as well. And it is additionally jeopardized by the problems in the rule of law, the weak institutions, low public trust in the institutions, and the modest socio-economic development, which are in essence the main reason for the increased immigration, especially of the young population. Of course, speaking about the weak institutions, I would like to say that we are on the equal footing. I mean, Skopje and Brussels, for example. We are especially weak in this regard, but these are the problems, I would say, with a common denominator, and both sides of this Europe, institutionally and not only geographically speaking, should address that issues. Of course, regional economic integration is important, since the integration into the single market is irreplaceable, simply irreplaceable. There is no other alternative for us in order to have satisfying levels of the economic and annual growth. Massive economic package in this regard, I would like to emphasize that massive economic package, which was presented at the beginning of the year by the DG Enlargement, with its focus and well-balanced internal structure, was a sign that after a long period of time, the European Union started again to think strategically about the region. However, everybody knows, especially we, the people living in the region, that the economic integration by itself is not enough if it is not followed by the political integration. In my view, it's crucial both processes to go on inseparable or in parallel or together. What is lacking at the moment is not the absence of strategic documents on the part of Brussels, but it seems to me that what is lacking is the practical engagement on a larger scale on the part of the European Union with the approach hands-on directly in the region in order to prove that the Western Balkan is really its major strategic and geopolitical priority. The key goal, everybody remembers that, the key goal as declared at the beginning by the president of the new European Commission, von der Leyen, that she would like Europe to be a major geostrategic player in the world, is not possible without completing the integration of the Western Balkan countries into the European institutional infrastructure. On the other hand, speaking from our perspective, stability, security, and prosperity, of course, of the whole region and its overall democratic development rests upon the European perspective. If eventually a political vacuum is created, that it will be for sure misused by extra-regional forces. And unfortunately, something like that is already happening in some parts of the region. Our region should not be treated as European neighborhood. And negative development, even in one country, can have, for sure, a negative spillover effect on the whole region. Important stakeholders in this regard are the member states as well, that are our neighbors. I'm speaking about the member states of the European Union. They have in this period of the year, especially the unique opportunity to position themselves as contributors to the overall European stability and prosperity. To sum up, two reasons are behind the Western Balkan countries lagging behind in developing their democracies and in their European integrations. First of all, no one should hide that, everybody knows that, our meager record in the field of delivering democratic reforms. And second one, absence of Europe, I have to say that, which is preoccupied by itself for years. If Europe continue to stay inward looking, the whole region will be frozen regarding its democratic development. Instead of thinking about the Balkans only when big migration waves are coming, Europe should support the pro-European leads in the region and reward the successful examples of the countries who are really delivering. Otherwise, everybody knows what the alternatives are, and the alternatives are waiting: authoritarian and populist Eurosceptics.
Thank you. Those are strong words. You didn't mix your message there. It's very clear, and it's good. It's really good to set the tone for this conversation. Can I press you a little bit further? By the end of this week, what is it you want to hear?
Only one sentence, that we finally are going to organize the first intergovernmental conference on our European integration. We have been waiting for so long, and we have delivered up to now what no country in the world, not only on the European continent, has delivered. We have changed the name of the country in order one day to be the member of NATO and of the European Union.
Indeed.
Nobody has did that in the past. And so that was, believe me, a very big sacrifice on the part of the people who are now in charge to lead the country. I can tell you in short that during my presidential campaign last year, the mainstay of my campaign was European Union, NATO, and internal cohabitation between the big ethnicities, big ethnic groups, ethnic communities. And I can tell you that I have a very strong opponents on the other side.
Indeed.
And that a tough struggle. We have won at the end. But my next question is, what, not myself only, but the people who has been around me, I mean the people in the government, the current government, what they're going to say, for example, at the end of the next year, during the local elections, we have scheduled them for October 2021. The same thing. And the opponents, our opponents, political opponents will say, why is now Europe? You have delivered everything. We have the nationwide referendum on changing our name. And the other side is not delivering out of some technical or, I don't know, some historical disputes. Come on. We do not have the maneuvering space anymore to persuade the people.
So we hear your frustration and also your I suppose, impatience given the changes. And I think we all appreciate what it must mean to have made such a fundamental change in order to play differently, play by a different set of rules, if you like. And I hope that, I'm not sure if we've got people on Zoom and in live stream from von der Leyen's commission, any commissioner or cabinet officer. If you're listening, respond, tweet, give us a response to what you've just heard. And you've had a very clear ask. And I'd be interested to hear from any of you on Zoom. Okay, in terms of, you've heard from the president, the one thing is actually walk the talk and put in place a date for an intergovernmental discussion and a different pathway that is practical as opposed to more hand-wringing and bureaucratic wheeze. Okay, on that note, thank you, sir, and hope you will stay with us. We can come back to you in a moment. I want to move over to Caroline, Austrian Federal Minister for the European Union and the Constitution. You've just heard from the President. I'd like to take your reaction to what you've heard, Caroline, but also, has someone who's been involved in the Berlin process, what's your sense of the outlook on a common regional market? Welcome. Over to you.
Greetings and a warm welcome from Vienna. To be honest, and I think I can speak for all of us, in the meantime, we are really tired of having these video conferences. On the other hand, it's really good to having this opportunity and meeting, at least in this setting. And so I'm really thankful also to you, Dharmendra, that you are organizing this meeting. I think it's more important than ever of talking about the inclusion of the Western Balkan countries. And I would like to send a message at the very beginning to reiterate that for Austria, it remains a foreign and European policy to integrate the Western Balkan countries in the European Union. That has always been our goal, and we are advocating in that regard since Austria had the presidency in the Council of the European Union, second half of 2018. I think a lot has been moved in the meantime, and it was a great success that there was the conclusion of starting the accession process in March 2020, in a year of the pandemic, in a year where we do have a lot to do of fighting the COVID-19 crisis. But on the other hand, I always said that we have the responsibility as politicians to think in the future. We have to tell the people why the European Union is important for us, why all the things we gained by having the accession process already behind us, why it is important for the people of Austria and also the people of Europe to be part of this community. And dear President, I can fully understand your frustration when it comes to the accession process and the real start through the first intergovernmental conference, that nothing is going forward. I can tell you, we are really side by side with the German presidency, and they are fighting 24/7 that this start that it can come true still until the end of the year. I know that there are some let's say, issues which have to be sorted out. And now it comes to good message. I was able, and you mentioned that already, Damendra, I was able to participate in the Sofia Summit in the Berlin process on the 10th of November this year. And I think that was a great success, that there was a conclusion that the region wants to work together even more intensively, that there should be green lanes towards the European Union, and that there should be a strengthening of the European competitiveness through a future-oriented industrial strategy, through high standards, through recycling things as a recycling process, which have to be installed there. And I think it's important because all these implementation of green agendas, and the European Commission is also encompassing the countries of the Western Balkan, they require substantial public and private funding, and that is what this region has deserved, which is needed in this region, and where we all should really look that it can come true. I also wanted to mention that we had, and I'm happy that my colleague from the General Affairs Council, Petko from Bulgaria, is also within this meeting. We had General Affairs Council last week, and the German presidency organized it together with the countries of the Western Balkans. They were included because there were two topics on the agenda. First of all, the learnings out of the COVID-19 crisis, and secondly, the conference on the future of Europe. And whoever knows me, I'm always described in the meantime as impatient and demanding, knows that I'm advocating really strongly for a quick start of the conference on the future of Europe. And at the same time, I'm advocating for encompassing the countries of the Western Balkans already now, because it's our future, it's our common future we have to create now, starting to create now, talking about what people do want to see dealt with in the European Union, dealt together, and what has to be dealt on a regional basis, the so-called, in the meantime, everyone knows what is meant by subsidiarity. So I heard by Sef Masti, the president of Albania, that he said in the General Affairs Council meeting last week, also in a virtual way, okay, that's in the meantime our novelty, and he said, we learned something out of this crisis. There's only one way for the Western Balkan countries, and this way means towards the European Union. So let's stick together, let's overcome all issues which are between us and the Western Balkans, or between several countries. Let's really take out one lesson. Every country of the European Union, and also the countries of the Western Balkans, are small countries compared to the global players, compared to the US and compared to China. And we have to stick together to find a way in this global exchange. We want to be a strong Europe, and we have to do our utmost to strengthen our forces and also to defend our values. And that was also something the president of North Macedonia mentioned. There is a lot to do still for the countries of the Western Balkans, but I think the European Union showed that it is able to support the countries of the Western Balkans by having this package of 3.3 billion euros within the crisis. And I can also talk for Austria and for our priorities. We will stand clear next to you on your way to the European Union. It's clear you have to do a lot, but we will support you as much as we can and in the best way we can.
It's a strong message, Caroline. Thank you very much for that. You've heard, it feels like a make or break time for many, especially when you think about the context of North Macedonia and others, that actually, if you don't get the signal this year, it really will set things back. And are you saying to us here that from your experience and your engagement with the German presidency, we're looking at something that will be more than what we've heard before? Will it be the same mood music with just changing the chairs around a little bit? Or do you think we'll see something drastic or something more radical coming out of the decisions this week? I'm not asking you to be a crystal ball gazer, obviously, but based on your political knowledge and your engagement so far, what's your sense?
So, well, we will have an update tomorrow in the General Affairs Council, which is set for the purpose of preparing the European Council for the heads of state and government, which will take place on the 10th of December. We will have an update on the Western Balkan policy now and the status quo, also by the Commissioner Bahey. And I'm a strict person in general, so I'm always sending or trying to send really clear messages. But I think I wouldn't overestimate if there is not the start this year. Of course, I can understand again the frustration by the North Macedonian president and also by all the people who were engaged in this process. But on the other hand, we see it also regarding other questions. Think of Brexit, think of the budget. We do have a lot of issues at the moment at stake. And I wouldn't say it's a bad message. Of course, it's sad, and as a demanding and impatient person, I would like to see something this year. But on the other hand, if it is next year, then don't be frustrated. Yeah, we will do it anyway.
Thank you. Thank you for those words. But you can imagine from a president that's actually campaigned on a certain message, as many have actually in the region, to really strike a balance with community need, but also an aspiration. We know, actually, by the barometer, the West Balkans barometer, that, you know, just less under 2 years ago, the majority of the population are pro-Europe and want to engage in an accession process, want to be part of Europe. And I suppose the message, actually, let's wait another 12 months, may not go down that well. But thank you for your commentary. I will bring you back in because I'm interested in your thoughts about why you think the Conference on the Future of Europe would be helpful to the Balkans. So something for you to just come back to us on that, please, because from where we sit, it feels like a ship with no navigation at the moment in terms of that concept. And obviously there has been an issue, obviously, because of what COVID has done and the priorities that we've been thinking of. And it feels like the Conference on the Future of Europe is basically not with any let's say, leadership at the moment or clarity about what it's going to do, but you may be able to offer us a difference. I want to bring in the audience and remind you that please do use your virtual hand. This is a great opportunity. We have over 100 of you on the Zoom from all over. Have your voice. Say what you think about what you've heard from the North Macedonian President, but also from Caroline and others that are in this room. What do you think needs to give? And what I share your frustrations or what your ideas are around this. And we have a significant youth delegation with us, joining us on this as well. So a warm welcome to you. I want to go to, firstly, I've got Tanya. Tanya Milevska? Tanya, could you put your video on? And you're muted.
Well, I'm not Tanya, Alessia. The line just got down to me.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
I can see Tanya
so we're
too.
three people.
Absolutely. Well, let's go with Tanya first, if Tanya can hear me,
Okay,
and then I'll come to you, Alicia. Do introduce yourself, Tanya.
I'm the Brussels correspondent for the Macedonian news agency, Tanya Milevska. I have a question, actually, for the president. Mm-hmm. I would like to know, I mean, it's all very nice what you all said, but the reality is that North Macedonia is now blocked, and that as the Austrian no, not minister, but said, well, that we might be blocked for another year. So starting from there, what's the plan? And do you, as president of the country, have a strategy as to how do we go on in terms of reforms, in terms of progress, in terms of Europeanizing the country without actually starting the negotiations? Is there some kind of plan B in question?
Tanya, thank you. Yeah.
I would also like to I would also like to ask, do you think that the Bulgarians will change their mind in 1 year, that they will stop asking what they are asking?
Tanya, very challenging questions. I think you also know the answer to that question, given what the president has just said. But I will bring him back in. Don't worry, I will bring him back in. I want to move on to Alicia. As I said, we have a significant youth delegation. We've partnered up with UNICEF. We're really pleased to work with them to bring in quite a significant youth delegation. So, Alicia, introduce yourself.
Hello. First of all, thank you for this great opportunity and for giving the youth a voice. I want to just start my comment by saying thank you for the summit organizers that are giving us the voice and the platform. I have a question, but shortly I will pinpoint some difficulties and truths that we face every day regarding the youth. As young people, we are left a little bit in the shadow regarding this enlargement program in European Union. I am aware of all.
We've just lost you, Alicia. What a pity. My apologies. I think we've lost you. I will bring you back in the moment you get your Wi-Fi back. In the meantime, is there anyone else who's got a hand up who'd like to come in? Anyone else from the youth delegation? Or anyone who fancies a crack at a comment? I believe there are. Kostis?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you please introduce yourself as well?
Yes, perfect. So my name is Kostis Yannidis, and I am the president of the Erasmus Student Network, which is a pan-European organization that promotes student mobility, but youth mobility. Mm-hmm. And we are in favor of giving opportunities for young people in order to self-develop and meet together from different cultures. And first of all, I want also to thank you for giving the space for young people to talk in this very important summit. And from my side, I want to highlight that from the perspective of ESN, we are always trying to collaborate with the Western Balkans, but also with Eastern Partnership. So we want EU young people together with non-EU young peers to sit together and exchange ideas and cultures and so on. And I would like to reiterate the fact that while we are waiting for the enlargement and the integration, there are some opportunities that EU can support Western Balkans, for example, the Erasmus Plus program. Mm-hmm. And I would like to ask whether if the EU delegates or the presidents of the North Macedonia, if they have any plans to integrate a little bit more their young people through these programs like Erasmus Plus, because we believe that this is the best integration tool until we reach the point for Western Balkan countries.
So to be clear, you'd like that program to actually function as it were normally, but working in the Balkan states basically, and making sure it's ramped up. That's what you'd like to see happen.
Yes,
okay.
Yes,
those of you exactly. Are on this, if you have a reaction to that, let us know. But also, let's hope that those of you in the union, those who are your ministers and representative of the union, have a response to that, please, because we'd like to know what you think of that. It seems like a very sensible approach. People have talked about how Erasmus has been the backbone of creating more of Europeanness in terms of values and connections. So why not give that a shot? I think, Alicia, we have you back.
Yes, I am back. I don't know what happened, but since we're in a pandemic, the internet is going crazy as well.
It is indeed, today in particular. Don't worry, go for it.
Okay, so yeah, just what I was trying to say is that as young people, we are left a little bit in the shadow, like because we want to be involved in this process. We have been waiting for this moment. Now the attention is on us. For the representative is a duty and a principle to work towards this goal, but for us, the young people, is a need. we want to be able to study in European countries and not use school as a chance to move out of our home countries. We want the economical and social potential to be cultivated, grown, unleashed. We want to choose freely where we want to work, just like our friends in the EU. We want our ideas in technology, Green Deal, to be supported and trusted by foreign investors. Why not? And so many more other issues that we face and desires. We have the capacities because around Europe, just like with Erasmus, we have proven that we are successful stories and we have successful students, workers that have made a contribution just because the EU gave that chance. So what I would suggest is I would personally invite each of any one of us here in this panel to be in a room with young people from the Western Balkans and dare to ask them how they give solutions to each problem we are facing. We are not talking about individuals that are not educated. We are well educated, autocritics, critics, full of passion, and we crave the change. Now, coming to my question, how important is the participation of youth for the panel, not only because of brain drain, unemployment, but actually in the process, and how will the youth will be involved in giving its contribution in the enlargement program? So this is my question.
Alicia, thank you. Thank you for your passion. And, you know, also I want to say to you, all of you, those of you who are from the UNICEF youth delegation, you do not have to say thank you. It should be a norm. It should be about a diversity of approach that's inclusive. And from our part at Friends of Europe, we see this as absolutely a given. This is how we operate. And, you know, really, you should not thank us. We're thanking you for taking out the time and contributing your voice and brain and passion to creating solutions. Alicia, come back to you one second. What's the one thing you'd like to see happen? If you want, do you want a conference on the future of, you know, young people involved, rather than a conference on the future of Europe, a conference of young people, both from Europe and from the Balkans, coming together? Is that something that you'd like to see happen? I'm putting words into your mouth. I don't intend to, but is that what you want?
No worries. Of course, yeah, that is something that I aspire because we're talking about, just as I informed in my first speaking, is that we are well educated. We have the potential to create new ways how we can solve these issues because 20 years of experience, of course, that will has the right capacities in order to do this kind of problem, but it also gives some bureaucraties times. But if you have a room with full of young people, you actually have solutions that are maybe more efficient because we think smarter. We have shown ourselves that when it comes to young people, now we are well educated, we are critics, and we can actually give solutions. So yeah, this is a conference with the Western Balkans and the European by facing every problem, by pinpointing what are the problems and actually creating a solution for each one of them. And then the people with experience in the EU and in Western Balkans can have a debate with us as well.
Thank you. So there, in less than half an hour, we've got two very specific asks. One from the president saying, let's get on with an intergovernmental conference, but make sure you mirror that, and from your point of view, is mirror that with a young person's conference, which is interregional. So good. It's good to have two very concrete things to be building on as recommendations. I want to bring in Erhard Busek. Erhard?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, a very warm welcome to you. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Please do introduce yourself and your question or query.
Totally right.
Thank you.
I think I don't have a question. I have some experience. To present myself, I was for 7 years in charge of the Stability Pact for Southeast Europe. I'm doing the Southeast European Cooperative Initiative in the framework of OEC and so on and so on. May I say quite straight, I'm not very friendly. I think what the youngsters here are saying, I understand them completely. But the real partner of our talk should not be the youngsters of Southeast Europe. It should be the oldies in the government, in the parliament, in the think tanks, and so on and so on. Because for the moment, we have not really a strategy. It's very nice what Caroline Edstadler is saying, but she knows it exactly. I think nothing is moving in this context. So far, I'm proposing to change the strategy. I think now we are always looking to conditionality. Have all the countries fulfilled the conditions, and what about the legal situation and justice system and so on and so on. I think we have to turn around. Let's take all the countries of Southeast Europe in the European Union, and step by step they can come in concerning law, concerning economy, social affairs, and so on and so on. But they should be included in decision-making. Otherwise, if this is not happening, on the one side, the majority in these countries will lose their interest on the European Union. And what is even more dangerous, that step by step, Turkey, Russia, China is becoming more important for Southeast Europe than the European Union. The danger for the European Union, and this is a push to the member states of the European Union, is that European Union is marginalized. We are only 5 to 7% of the global population. We are still of some importance in economy, but I think this is also going down because the others are coming up, which is quite good. That's not criticizing. I think here we have to have another position. And I'm asking the countries of Southeast Europe, and I'm asking those in the government, in the member states of the European Union, to change the strategy. It is a boring process, this enlargement, what is happening, but there is nothing going forward.
Thank you, Erhard, for those very frank words. But also, I like the way in which you said, let's get the oldies together. Surely we need to get the oldies, governments, and the young ones together if we're going to make a fist of this and make it move in the right direction. But there is something about how do you build on the political capital that people of an older generation are able to use and perhaps don't exploit as much as they should to create change. I want to bring in, on the point that you just made, before I go back to some of our speakers to respond, because it's on that point of a change of strategy. Melinda, very warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. You're the Secretary General of the Regional Cooperation Council. Melinda?
I was just unmuting myself. I'm here.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
You've just had some very powerful commentary that you've listened to about the politics, about the youth, about different ways of working. Tell us, what's your response to what you've heard? But more importantly, how has the 9 or 10 months that we've just gone through changing your strategy of investment and approach, if at all?
First of all, so good afternoon to everybody. If you don't mind, I would like to reply very shortly to Alessia.
Mm-hmm.
I liked her passion and enthusiasm, as you mentioned as well. I just wanted very briefly to let her and the other, her friends and peers as well, to let them know that on 14th of December, so next week, we are organizing as RCC the launch of one of the projects that is called Youth Lab Project, focused on the young people in the region. So to support the youth organizations, and for this time, we have chosen to come with a regional pool of experts that will discuss and offer, so young people will offer the smartness, as Alessia said, so their ideas about how to fight the unemployment, which is a huge problem in the Western Balkans. And I'm referring to what you mentioned previously, our Balkan Barometer that is every year commissioned and then launched by RCC, where young people from Western Balkans, on a majority, overwhelmingly 71% of them, they speak the same language of Alessia. So they are eager to go and move and study abroad, so ready to leave their homelands and their countries, which I don't think it speaks of a good perspective in the near future on the Western Balkans, because it relates then to the problems of leaving and losing, having the brain drain, losing the young people, and then having a region that will become older pretty soon. Now, I'll go back to your question.
But before you do, Melinda, if I can interrupt you a second, will that deliver the type of will it release the type of energy we've just heard from Alicia and others about creating some sort of inter-regional dialogue of young people? So there's the idea of having this fund that you're releasing, which will hopefully enable the voice to be heard more, but will it create the kind of inter-regional connection and a platform for people to engage around how we approach this problem differently?
I'm referring to one of the projects that are present on the Western Balkans. There is an organization focused on youth entirely on the Western Balkans, which is RICO. There are other programs from the EU side focusing on youth. What we are trying to do is to build up this intra-regional platform for young people to be capable and able to communicate with each other and to share their experiences plus their proposals and ideas with each other. We do not work in different economies. So all we do is based on cooperation and intra-regional connections. So, but things definitely will not change overnight. So do not take me ill. I'm realistic. I'm grown up enough to be realistic.
Sure.
But I think it's a good moment as well to hear from young people how they see the perspective and if they have really great ideas on fighting unemployment, which on the other hand is the responsibility of governments. So let me come back to your question. But very, very shortly, briefly, I was reflecting on when I read the title of the session. If we are working as per Regional Cooperation Council, if we are working on regionalization of Western Balkans or on closing the gaps of Western Balkans with EU. We all know there have been blatant changes in world politics and blatant changes this year due to the COVID pandemic. I'm referring as well to the new preferences, to the disappointments, to the uncertainty, to the connections, to the attempts of states, economies to strengthen and to look somehow inward. Because in times of crisis, you know, people and humans tend to look mostly inward. So I think this is, it didn't start it now, but the pandemic really highlighted this moment when we are moving from global to regional interest. And I see in the last years, Western Balkans trying to prove the importance of moving forward as an integrated region. I'll give you one example that now it's well known. You'll hear it mentioned by everybody from the European Commission and other partners. What happened during the very first days of the pandemic? All were shocked. We were all afraid. So few people really were cool those first days. In the region, the situation turned out to be immediately dramatic. You will remember the first days when the shortages of gloves, of masks, of respirators was really hitting in the media very, very strong. Then it happened that suddenly the borders in the region, those borders of disputes, immediately and suddenly became one major subject. That is how the idea of coordinating and bringing all together all the actors that operate in the Western Balkans, I mean from governments to international organizations, EC as well. We decided to coordinate a movement to keep the borders open, which was vital at that moment. That was the first positive reaction out of the pandemic, the green lanes in the Western Balkans. We had 18 border crossing points, so we do share as the region 18 border crossing points with EU and 14 among Western Balkans. The number of trucks when pandemic started was around 2,000 passing in a border crossing point per day. And you can imagine there were long queues, long hours, drivers in quarantine, foods being expired, and so on. Now is nearly 13,000 trucks per day, and 80% of them have passed through the green lanes. Okay, this is a good story of integration in the region. Okay. But will that be enough in the longer run? If we'll continue to look inward, trying to integrate deeper with among ourselves and each other, and in the meantime, trying to get to buy time and get it loose in integrating ourselves with EU, with the borders with EU, with the value chains in EU, with innovation and technological shifts that are happening worldwide, then we are not really integrating ourselves in EU. We are just working into an inward perspective. So whatever has happened last year, with a success story in the Sofia Summit that you mentioned, now we have the common regional market. where all the economies of the region, all six, decided to bring forward a project that was initiated years ago, 3.5 years ago, called Regional Economic Area. From that moment until today, too many things have changed, and I think that there are some good stories. Again, as well, there are some other agendas that face challenges, get delayed. Some were even abandoned for various reasons. Some reasons that are quite strong in the region are always political disputes. So the region has one good chance. It's called Common Regional Market. On that, we have the possibility not only to integrate better, but to bring forward the process and push the process of regional cooperation. That is going to be the most important thing. It's not only regional integration, macroeconomic or economic integration.
And I think you're making a really sophisticated, important political point, is that actually, if you're going to try and play by other people's rules in order to actually improve yourselves, why not create your own rules of the game, invest in your own future through greater regionalisation, so that you can actually not have to make your development and growth dependent on a rule book that doesn't seem to be opened up to you all the time. So that's a very important point. Or am I putting different words in your...
Or at least refresh your thoughts while reading the rule book again.
Okay. And I know that my point is a more political one. I can make that given from a think tank, but I understand your position. But it's an important point, is that actually if you're going to wait for that door to open, you're going to lose out in terms of your own self-development as a region, and for greater integration of infrastructure and all the things you've said. And it's a very important point. In terms of the approach you're taking, though, is your approach changed? And is that what you're going to be doing more of in the region in the next couple of years?
No, what do you mean changed?
In terms of the approach that your council will take to support, will it be about making sure that we can get further regional integration happening, which is not simply based on accession?
I think that what we have been doing and we will continue to do is to work on both the two sides of the same coin, on the regional cooperation and the regional integration. So integrating markets among each other in the region, and on the other way, cooperating, enhancing the cooperation, which is much more a political process than an economical one. In the meantime, we are not losing time on this, because all the countries in the region and the Western Balkans is not sailing east, is sailing west. You mentioned the support on the EU, it's 59%. So it's 56%, sorry. So it's even more than 50% year by year, which speaks a lot and in a loud voice on the need and the necessity to organize and take things and then enhance the cooperation at home, while on the way trying to follow the model that it is in front of us, that of EU. In the meantime, as I said, I don't expect any accession to happen pretty soon. You heard the president of North Macedonia, but I do confirm that that kind of sentiment is everywhere in the region. You'll find that in Albania, you'll find that in Montenegro, Serbia as well, that are the front runners in the process. In Kosovo, waiting in line for the visa liberalization. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, that. And I'm not, we will all know now that the process will not only depend, the accession anymore, only by the reforms we take at home. It will depend a lot on what is happening on the EU side, as we are witnessing every day. So in the meantime, it's quite vital for us not to leave, not to lose our people. 4.9 million people left Western Balkans in last year, and they went in EU.
Yes.
If we are following on that rhythm every day, it will be devastating. So we need to recuperate. We need to open markets at home. We need to offer to students the possibility of mobility, of recognition of diplomas, of professions, so that they can find or at least think twice before leaving their homes, trying to integrate these markets better in here and make the perspective not as gloomy as even the pandemic now
But for that to happen, Mylinda, thank you very much for those points, because those are important ones. But in order for that to happen, young people like Alicia and others who are here need to have not only the words, but actually the actions that create the aspirations and give meaning to them through proper infrastructure and support that makes it feel better to stay at home than leave. I want to bring in Caroline before she has to leave, our Austrian minister. I know that you're going to have to leave very shortly. Caroline, I just want you to respond to some of the points you've heard just now, and in terms of your final remarks before you're going to have to dash off, which I know you've got, some things to do that cannot wait.
Well, thank you so much, and again, apologizes. We do have a lot of issues also regarding, and I'm taking the keyword which Melinda used, also open borders with our neighboring countries, and that's why I have to leave. But I would very quickly like to reflect on what Erhard Busek said. We know each other quite well. He is he was not only responsible for the Stability Act, but he is also a very, very, very experienced politician. And if he is talking quite openly, he of course is right. I just want to send a message. It's not a contradiction being a relatively young person, as I'm considering myself, being part of the government and having still visions. And I wanted to reflect on what Alicia and the others said. I remember when I was 14, Austria joined the European Union, and there was a big majority in favor of being part of the European Union at that time. 2 out of 3 people voted for the accession process and the way to the European Union. And at that time, we had visions. And that's why I'm so interested in bringing the Western Balkans, the young people, into this conference on the future of Europe. Why I'm advocating for a quick start of the conference on the future of Europe. And I know that that we can't solve all the problems at once. That was what Erhard also said. Yeah, there are several issues which have to be solved. And I'm a realistic person, so I said, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah. There is not a solution at the end of the year, but we will follow this way. And I continue to advocate for the conference on the future of Europe to bring you as the youngsters, as Erhard Busek named you, in this process, because you are the future and we need your visions.
Caroline, thank you very much. And I hope, that, neighbours, friends across borders can count on you and others. Because one of the concerns is that there's only so much patience people will have. And as the President in his opening remarks made reference to, there are other forces that are likely to fill the vacuum if the EU doesn't fill it itself or take control or provide the right support and infrastructure. And that's the concern, that sometimes we don't learn the lessons of history. But thank you for your commentary and good luck with the rest of your meetings for today. Before I bring in the President and also our final speaker from Bulgaria, and thank you, Minister, for being patient, I want to bring in a voice from Albania, a previous minister in the government there, one of our European young leaders who's raised her hands, Fioralba. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I always struggle with it. Fioralba?
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me, Deputy Minister of Justice, just to correct the term and position.
Yes.
I would really reiterate what the President of Macedonia has already explained. And how I see it is a matter of leadership. I agree very much with the Austrian minister that EU is struggling with Brexit, with the pandemic, but it's a matter of showing leadership. And one thing in leadership is prioritizing. So the message we want to get as Western Balkan countries, are we a priority in EU for enlargement policy? Is enlargement a priority of EU? Because having priorities means you do not postpone them in the agenda whenever a case emerges. And to me personally, also as a professor of EU law, opening the accession talks is an empty spoon. It does not have any cost in just organizing an international government conference. It doesn't mean any soon we're going to become member states. It means that we're going to talk. And in this regard, I do not see the big frustration after member states to advance their interests, because they're going to have lots of moments to advance their own interests during the accession talks. The first international government conference is just a conference, which means that we're ready to talk with each other, and would be really good for the region, because on one side, it's going to ease all this frustration. It's going to be good for the image of the EU, because it would show also leadership. And to me, personally, it's a win-win matter. With regard to regionalism, I very much agree that it's a very good option. Opening markets, establishing market economy, especially for post-communist country is very good. But I don't want it to be like a second option of accessing internal market or a second option to EU integration. Of course, as Western Balkan countries, we have a lot to learn about the internal market rules and for freedoms, especially also with regards to subsidies or state aid rules, which are problematic in our region because we're used to state subsidizing economy, to state keeping into market businesses which are not rentable and viable. So learning how to have a free market would also be good for like a test for the region before entering EU market, because entering EU market without this exercise would have real negative consequences for businesses in the country, for small families which run small business or SMEs. But on the other hand, I again want to, without not taking much time, to stress the message that the Balkans need to be considered yet a priority of EU. And it would be a win-win for both parties, just organizing this international government conference, because the country has done lots of sacrifices, Macedonia as well, Albania with the justice reform, and all the reform we're doing. And we're looking for leadership and also for a reliable, trustworthy partner. And since the last strategy of EU of large ones was also stressing on predictability, reliability, I understand fair and strict as well. We are looking forward to see this image for Europe.
Fiorba, thank you so much for coming on board and giving that very powerful message about, wanting a partner that you can trust, who's predictable and is not going to walk away or come and, it's like having a dodgy relationship, with either a series of one-night stands that doesn't actually go anywhere, but you want something that's going to be meaningful and lead to love and happiness in some ways or another. But there's something about how some of you might want to think about, is it time to rethink what the entire accession process is like? Are there alternatives which are midpoints, which can actually do the thing you're saying, which is so you actually learn by doing rather than waiting to have further conversations? Are there ways in which the process can be thought through differently, especially in the context of the Balkans? I want to bring in our final speaker before I come back to the President, and that is Petko. Petko, Bulgarian Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. And my apologies, Petko, for keeping you waiting. As you can imagine, this has been a fairly rich conversation, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of listen to what people were saying and then come back to what you've heard. Firstly, if you could just react to some of the points that have been made, especially with regard to yourselves in Bulgaria, but what do you see as being both the bumps along the way that got to a successful Sofia? So it'd be good to get your perspective on, what were the big bumps on the road to Sofia, but what's next from words to action?
Well, Dharmendra, thank you very much for having given me the floor, or rather the screen. I will join Caroline and all the previous speakers who warmly thanked to the Friends of Europe for the organization of our today's event. This is an event which is dedicated to the regional cooperation and to the role of the regional cooperation for the democratic and economic development of the Western Balkans region. Our understanding in Sofia, in Bulgaria, is that the natural place of the Western Balkans region is in Europe. As a member state of the European Union and as a member state of NATO, as well as the immediate neighbor, Bulgaria supports and contributes to the achievement of this goal, having all the 6 countries of the Western Balkans in the framework of the European Union. Throughout the years, we have been rendering our support, we have been sharing our advice. There should be no doubt there is no and there will be no change in this position of ours. Retaining the focus on the European integration of the Western Balkan countries is and remains and will remain one of the main priorities of the Bulgarian foreign policy. We very much believe that a credible accession perspective continues to be the key driver for transformation. I'll go back briefly to the Bulgarian presidency, the first ever of the Council of the European Union, by saying that the presidency invested significant political and diplomatic efforts to put high on the EU agenda the European perspective of the Western Balkans. And later on in May 2018, the Sofia Declaration and the Sofia Priority Agenda were agreed upon, which just reconfirmed our understanding unequivocally. The natural continuation of the Sofia summit was Bulgaria assuming the Berlin Process presidency in 2020, together with the Republic of North Macedonia. That was the first ever joint presidency of the process of an EU member state and of an EU candidate country. And this clearly represented both the engagement of the EU, but also the regional ownership of the process. The objective was to boost the inclusive regional cooperation in a lot of fields of interest. The final goal of the efforts was to provide better life for the citizens of the Western Balkan countries and to bring them closer to the European standards and norms. Speaking about the bumps on the road to Sofia summit, yes, there were, but together with our colleagues and friends in Skopje, we managed to achieve the best possible results in this situation. Our joint presidency started with a well-structured program of events, and they have been based on the commonly agreed priorities. Throughout the joint presidency, we used to work very closely with the participants and the partners in the Berlin process, with the European Commission, with the Regional Cooperation Council, but also in a very close coordination with the Croatian and the German presidencies of the Council. The first 3 years of the year were very successful, and we had a lot of intensive exchanges, and I will mention only the informal ministerial meeting that was held in Skopje on the 10th of March. And shortly after that, the COVID-19 pandemic put on hold our initial calendar of events. In this situation, we had to do two major things. One of them was to reschedule the calendar, and the second one to start using largely the modern communication tools. And as a result of that, in October and November, we had 6 very important events. And finally, on the 10th of November, we had the Sofia summit. It was preceded by the Sofia ministerial, but also the meetings of the ministers of economy in Sofia, but also the ministers of health and interior in Skopje, and also 2 very important events that were held in Tirana. The main achievements from the Sofia summit are actually 3. One of them is the declaration on the establishment of common regional market in the Western Balkans. And I will certainly agree strongly with President Pendarovski, who used a very eloquent terminology. The integration in the common market is irreplaceable. And the second important document was the declaration on the green agenda for the Western Balkans. And having obtained the support of the European Commission and the Regional Cooperation Council, we managed to achieve the adoption of these 2 documents. But I would also like to mention another very important one. These are the chair's conclusion, which incorporated the main commitments and conclusions from all the ministerial meetings and events which took place throughout our joint presidency. Very briefly on what is the next stage.
Yes, because what I'd like you to really focus on, Petko, is those are all great documents, and if I use Alicia as the kind of icon metaphor for the frustration of just simply words and no action, speaking to the young person that's in this audience, but also across across that region, what's the concrete things you can point to as the action that will move beyond words? And I know that's difficult. I do appreciate it's hard. But if you could address some of that, that would be helpful.
Yes, certainly. As I said, we have two comprehensive documents on the table, and they have put the level of ambition very high. And what is the next stage in front of us? We have to put them in practice. We just have to implement. We have to start working on the implementation. And it needs to be underscored once again the important role of the regional cooperation, but also of the political will.
Okay.
If we achieve the objectives of the common regional market and of the green transition, that would certainly serve as a natural booster in all areas. Speaking of other next steps, well, definitely Bulgaria will remain a very active participant, very active and responsible actor in the Berlin process and in the regional cooperation as well. We are committed to cooperating closely with the forthcoming German presidency. It is our understanding, yes, that the Berlin process is not a substitute of the European integration. It is just a valuable, very valuable regional initiative, which is focused on improving our cooperation, the cooperation within the region. Just one word about the young people. Yes, I could only agree that they have a very important role to play, and certainly we in Bulgaria would be extremely supportive of any of the ideas that were mentioned during the previous
okay, that's good. That's noted. So you've heard that, young people, if I can refer to you as that you've heard it from Minister of State saying, put some of that in action. So you've got support, but it's public. Thank you, Petko. Thank you very much for engaging with us. I'm running out of time, and I want to be able to take as many of you as possible. I've only got less than 10 minutes left, but if I can say to the President, if you can bear with me a moment, because I'd like to give you the last word in this conversation. Before I bring you in, though, I want to bring in Filip. Filip Rabinovich.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Could you introduce yourself, please, for the benefit of our audience?
Good afternoon. My name is Filip Radunovic, and I'm working for GIZ at Sarajevo. Warm welcome from sunny Sarajevo. Very unusual for this part of the year, December. We have still warm weather here. I'm in charge of the regional program which promotes EU integration of all the Western Balkan 6. And since we have only a few minutes left, I'll just, as most of the predecessors, I just point out to Alicia's very passionate intervention. And I'll be very, very quick with only 2 notes on Alicia and another one on the work of RCC, very important work of RCC. I would like to point that there are mechanisms already set up in the region. We are working on them. One of the key mechanisms for youth cooperation, youth exchange, is the regional cooperation office. RICO set up only 4 years ago, operated for 3 years. They have done tremendous work in the past 3 years, and as such, they will start next year with our support and with being commissioned from the EU Commission and the German government with a great project, which will be the establishment of a school exchange scheme for the Western Balkan 6 countries. And I would urge people like Alicia and all of our guests today, especially the younger generation, to really follow up RICO's work closely, and especially since next year they will establish this exchange of teenage school pupils in the age between 11, 10 and 14 and 15. And what RICO will need is a huge number of youth facilitators. So there is a huge space for individuals to take part in, contributing to make this region more participative throughout many layers. And this is something very concrete I would like to drag your attention to when it comes to youth exchange and youth mobility in the region. On the second thought, which Melinda has mentioned on the establishment of the common regional market, I would like to remind, and this is basically only contributing to the work of RCC, to remind also on the importance of the CEFTA agreement. CEFTA is the Central European Free Trade Agreement, which will be basically one of the future pillars of the common regional market. And as such, it was agreed also on the Sofia Summit that it will be highlighted. And as such, the EU Commission is also with our support and support of the German government supporting CEFTA, and we are more than happy to contribute to the important work of RCC and CEFTA in the future as future pillars of the region. And together with RICO, you know, those three regional organizations, actually one is an agreement, they are basically the future of regionalism seen from our perspective, and they need to be fostered throughout many ways and many layers. And I would really ask all the colleagues, politicians, decision maker watching this really to drag even more attention and possibly also capacities towards those two organizations and this regional agreement, which is of huge importance.
Thank you very much. I think one of the important things is that it's often the case, isn't it, that when you're trying to do something as you are, there's something about making sure that the institution or the structures you're putting into place are as porous as they can be. And that requires a lot of outreach to make sure actually it's not people learning about it, but you're going to have to do a lot more hard work to make sure that young people and communities across the region are able to access it, and you have to be engaged in dedicated outreach through civil society organizations such as they are in the region. I want to move to Oton Anastasis, and I think I've got your name terribly wrong. I do apologize.
It's okay, everybody does. My name is Oton Anastasakis, and I'm the Director of Southeast European Studies at the University of Oxford. What I would like to put here is a more political matter, because we often speak about regional integration and digital economy and green economy and the youth. One reason why the youth is also fleeing the region, it's also because there are serious political problems. There are problems with the rule of law. Now, what I would like to see is, on top of this homegrown regional integration initiative, the region also needs to give a signal that it is serious about political reforms, because there are major problems there in terms of how democracies function and how that is totally unsatisfactory to younger generations, because we've been seeing protests all across. And especially with the cases of Poland and Hungary right now, which are already member states, the lessons are really dire there. So it's not just about what Europe does for the region. Sometimes I believe that the European integration is used as a smokescreen by political leaders in the region in order to hide their own weaknesses. Now, they also need to come together and convince the European Union from their side that they're serious about democratic reforms. That's all I wanted to
Thank you. Thank you for making that point. But it's also true. And I was waiting for someone to raise, you know, when you think about extension processes and you think about this hallowed and halcyon EU, let's think about Poland and Hungary and what's going on at the moment in terms of rule of law and how it's, you know, creating a major seismic shift of what the project's really about. But, you know, there's something here about how do you enable young people who are frustrated to have the platform to discuss the kind of things that you're noting, but also create the an integrated voice across the region to say enough is enough and this is what we want. And I'm sure that's possible because of social media, but wouldn't it be great if those who support community effort could actually put their arms around young people to actually say, this is a kind of voice and mechanism that you can actually have access to, freely to be able to think about issues around, you know, reform of public institutions and so on. I want to finish with, I started with the President, I want to end with the President. Sir, I can bring you back in. There's been a whole range of issues that have been raised, but I have every confidence that you'll be able to touch upon most of these in your response in concluding this first very vibrant and politically charged session of our Balkans Summit. Over to you, Stevo.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, I think it's okay now. I will try to sum up all of the questions being posed to me by the participants, and including a few of your remarks being made during the session. All of that is going to be, I suppose, within 3 or 4 minutes at the maximum. You can measure the time. Please
it's
start.
Okay, no need.
Okay, very quickly, very briefly to refer to the questions being posed by the young participants and of the webinar. First of all, there is no any plan B. And I'm quite sure that I'm not speaking on behalf of my country only, but about all the countries being in the process of integration and would-be candidates. And tomorrow's would-be union. What does that mean? It does not mean that there is no a plan B, plan C, plan D. There are plenty of regional organizations in the Euro-Asian area or continents, but no one of them is offering to us, the former communist states, what is really needed by our citizens. So I have said that many times to my interlocutors in Brussels. Economic integration of the Western Balkans must go hand in hand with the political integration. Western Balkan countries do not need only to be the members of the common European Union market, but to be part of the EU political institutions as well. Shortly, why is that needed? Many of the regional countries, if not all of them, I can speak for sure 100% about North Macedonia, we do lack a democratic experience. Why? Because some of us has never been in democracy prior to the fall of communism. So we do need democratic values to be firmly embedded in our institutions and even more in the minds of our people, our citizens, and the economic development can go only in parallel to the democratic development, not alone. 2 years ago, when the EU was engaged about the new methodology, one idea, I've said that several times in our public, some of us have been offered to be the members, unofficially, by the very high EU officials, to be members of the European Economic Area. I have rejected that out of hand on behalf of my country, of course. I don't know for the reaction of other political leads from this region, but that type of reasoning in the long run will be disastrous for us, because I personally and many of us wouldn't like to see or to witness the economic progress under being in the same time ruled by some local dictator or autocrat. Speaking about plan A or plan B. We have the plan B that is equal to plan A. That is the integration and only integration within the European Union. And of course, no one would like to see the lengthy process to be even lengthier. Montenegro is negotiating for 8.5 years, I think. Serbia is nearing seventh year of the negotiations with the European Union, and the end of their processes of integration is nowhere to be seen. So it is certainly not a productive negotiations. It's better to say, it's more honest to say to those people, to those countries, you are not still ready, and to have a formal decision on the part of the EU that for the time being, you're frozen. Very shortly about the question about the Erasmus process, I think Alicia was asking about that. We are already in for many years. Of course, that level of involvement on the part of North Macedonia is not equal to the level of involvement of the member states. But I can tell you that thousands of our students has already been embraced by that program. And that was one of the best common projects, I would say, between Europe and the Western Balkans, which has really produced very good ideas. Very bright people have passed through that. And many of them are now contributing to the local development, to the development of their nations, of their people. About the youth involvement was one of the questions, because the participants mainly are younger. I can refer to the term being used by Mr. Busek, who is speaking about the oldies. And what to say about the middle-aged people. I'm belonging to that category as well. So I cannot see any way forward for the Western Balkan nations if we are thinking that only one category of people can go forward and the others are going to wait for them to be Europeanized. Either all of us, with different levels, of course, I'm speaking about the strata of the society, are go forward towards Brussels, towards Europeanization. It's not possible only young people to be Europeanized, elderly not, or to lagging behind, or middle-aged people to stay on the side steps. So, and just very short remark, when I saw a long time no see for me with Mr. Busek. In 2002, Mr. Busek, we met for the first time. I was the young accomplice of the then president of Macedonia, Boris Trajkovski. We met in Tirana. There was kind of a regional summit. And on that meeting, you have been speaking only, but very concretely, only about the Corridor 8, which should connect Bulgaria, at that time Fyrom or Republic of Macedonia, with Albania. And I can tell you that nothing has moved significantly concerning that project. So if you agree with me, I would refer to that period of the time that this has been early 2000s. That was certainly the golden age of cooperation between the Western European institutions and the Western Balkan institutions. Unfortunately, in the past 3, 4, 5 years, nothing can be compared with that period of the time. Certainly that was not because of you or because of the then President Boris Trajkovski and other regional presidents and the prime ministers. But it seems to me that a lot of the political will on the part of Europe was present, especially after the Dayton Agreement was signed and Stability Pact was established and many other regional initiatives. We have blossoming of the regional initiatives, very concrete at that period of the time. Now we are speaking only about reforms, and Brussels unfortunately is accepting that. And in essence, that is only the rhetoric about reforms. What about the real reforms? So I think that both sides are to be blamed. In the first place, the regional elites, including myself, but the European Union really should pay more attention to this region because we are small, we are on the periphery of the continent, but at times we might be very strategic. When I was speaking about the broad European project, if we really and truly would like to see one day, short time from now, united Europe. What else? I think, okay, there is no plan B. To conclude with that, only plan A.
Thank you. No, thank you. You ended well. It's very clear that for all of you, whilst you're being very pragmatic and realistic about the opportunities that lie ahead, the very palpable sense of frustration, anger, cynicism is absolutely there. And as I said, it behoves the Commission and the Union to think very long and hard about its next steps. And as you say, it's not just a partisan point or a point from just to build on yourself, Sefko, but it's also what others have said. There's something about regional self-organization and regional pride and identity that is about growing strength in and of itself. As the point that Melinda and others have made. But there's something about the rule of law and the reform of public institutions. And I think there's something there about, and I hear what you say, Steve and others, but the Union, by being more actively engaged, a closer, trusted, predictable partner, can actually work together rather than simply set tests and thresholds. Colleagues, this has been riveting, it's been passionate, it's been thoughtful and very, very stimulating as a first session of this Balkans Summit. And before I do kind of close off, Alicia, I'm going to be really unfair and bring you in. If you were to sort of comment on the number of things you probably go to, right? What's your frustration level, 0 to 5?
4.
Okay.
I'll give it a chance. I just want to end it up with one short sentence. If we have been working with 2 engines right now, we need to make them 4 or more. We need to work with as much power as we have, and we need to prove ourselves that yes, we are capable of becoming a part of the European Union, and we are citizens that deserve that.
Thank you, Alicia. But also, isn't it also the case that about actually pride in ourselves? So there's something about, regardless of the accession process, there's something about the region being able to really do by itself, for its future, which is, a part and parcel of this game. Thank you all. As I said, this has been very, very thoughtful. Thank you first, because without your participation, those on live stream, but those on Zoom, you've been really patient. We've had lots of you participate and engage in this conversation. Tomorrow, same time, same place, is the next instalment of our Balkans Summit. As you know, we're going to be covering a whole range of issues. As you can see, tomorrow, the timing there and the details. We'll also be touching on the third day around security matters. So we're covering the whole panoply of issues to do with the Balkans in this 3-day summit. All I have to say to you is thank you all very much. Take care of yourself. ourselves. Continue to engage. Please do come back tomorrow and make this conversation as effective as it can be for you, but also the recommendations. We've had some very specific asks here, which from our part, with our partners, we will play back up into the Commission and other players. But thank you all very much. Take care, mind your distance and stay safe, and see you again tomorrow, hopefully. Bye-bye.